Hi folks, my name is Derek Bingham. I'm a developer advocate at AWS and welcome to episode 4 of Developers Let's Build. Today I'm going to show you how to add a photo upload capability to a React Native app. If you've missed the previous episodes of Developers Let's Build, in this series we are following the adventures of Richard and Mary as they build out a recipe application on a mobile device. So they can bring the app anywhere, take photos of the recipes, and store it in a cloud backend. I'll start today's episode with a quick recap of what we've built so far and what I will be building on top of. Then you can also check out the other episodes that my dev advocate colleagues, Veliswa, Sebastian, and Jenna have already built out, starting with app scaffolding, adding authentication and authorization, and then adding a Graphql API. So let's get started with today's episode. So here's my development environment. If I just play through the application as it kicks off, I've got Visual Studio Code, where I'll write all my code and use the terminal. And then on the right-hand side, I've got an Aws simulator. So here is app.tx, which is the entry point of the app. And then I've got my GraphQL mutations and subscriptions and queries that I use as part of my API to store and to retrieve data for my application. Signing into the application is really easy. So as I mentioned before, we're backed by Cognito user pool. So I put in my username, which is Derek, and then a super secret password, which I've already set up to log in. Once I hit the login button, you'll then see a list of recipes. So the list of recipes, currently I don't have any, I will display there. And to create a new recipe, I hit the new recipe button, fill in some details about my recipe, things like its title, how many servings I want, information about the ingredients and stuff like that. And then once I'm happy with the contents of my recipe, I hit save, which will be down in the bottom. Scroll down in the bottom and you'll see the save button. Hitting save will then allow me to save that recipe onto my cloud backend inside my Amazon DynamoDB table. And then it will display as the list when I enter the app. So that's the basic flow of the app. The look and feel and how that works. So today, this is what I'm going to build on top of and add the capability of image uploads. Well, before I go into the details, there's two main functions I want to highlight. It's the create recipe, which creates all of the data in the backend using the API, and the fetch recipe, which is where I retrieve all the recipes down to populate the list. So they're the two methods and functions, that we will attack today, as well as making some UI changes to make it look reasonably nice. So in this module, I will be doing a number of things. The first two things I'll do is I'll update my current backend. I'll update my AWS AppSync service. I will update the schema in that to be aware of what an image is. And then I'll also make the corresponding change to my Amazon DynamoDB table. Once I've done that, I will create a Amazon S3 bucket. And this S3 bucket is an object store where I will store all my images I want my app to retrieve. I will retrieve those images using a secure pre-signed URL. And they're the changes I want to make to my app today to make it photo upload capable. Before I get into the code, a bit about Amazon S3 or Simple Storage Service. If you haven't come across it before, this service underpins a lot of AWS use cases. It can be used for a lot of things, not just storing photos on a recipe app, funny enough. It can also be used on things like data platform solutions, data lakes. A lot of things can use S3 to underpin, because if you see there, it's got 11 nines of durability. So that means the data you put in S3 is a fair chance of sticking around. Then, as well as that, it also has some really great features, such as you're able to host static websites through S3, and also you're able to control its data lifecycle. So there's a number of different tiers in S3, from standard tier, which we will be using today, all the way to Glacier, which is our long-term archival storage. And all of that transition of data can be managed and you can move data over through those tiers automatically. So it's very cool service. As well as S3, we'll also continue to use AWS Amplify. So AWS Amplify, if you haven't seen the first three episodes, there's two main bits to it. There's the Amplify framework, which is open source, and you can get to it on GitHub and with issues and PRs and really get involved and engage with the community. And then there's also the Amplify Console, which is the part of Amplify that you can get through the main AWS console through your web browser. If we look at the Amplify framework in particular, we'll see that there's two parts to it. There's the CLI, which we use to provision services. So a typical CLI command we'll be using today will be amplify add storage, because we're trying to add the image storage to our application. And then we also have client libraries. So the client libraries I like to think about is how you interact with the backend resources you've just provisioned with the CLI. So today we're going to use storage.put API call to put images into our S3 bucket, which is what storage will create. So let's get into some code. The first part I'm going to do today is I'm going to update the application backend like I described. You don't have to do it in this order, but this is just the way I like doing things, by building the backend component first. So if I start off, the first thing I need to do when I start off any Amplify project that somebody's handed over to me, I always go Amplify status. So Amplify status is a CLI command that tells me exactly where I'm at. So this is telling me that I've got the auth category provisioned, and I've got the API category provisioned, and locally I've got no changes. So I'm ready to start developing on top of it. Once I've got a good, I'm confident that my development environment is ready to be developed on top of, the next stage is to add the service that I want, or the category that I want. So next command is amplify add storage. Once I hit enter, it'll give me a number of options. Can I create some content storage, which will be an S3 bucket, or NoSQL database, which will be another Amazon DynamoDB. For this one, I want some content, some images. So I click enter. Next, I'll give it a nice name. So I'll call this recipe photos. So this is just a friendly name that will identify my resource once it's created in the backend. Hitting enter, this is the name of my bucket. So all S3 buckets need to be globally unique. So I'm keeping that default because it's the global UID. Then I'm going to set up some access control to my bucket. I'm going to give only authenticated users access. So create, read, update, and delete access for authenticated users to my app, and I'll set that up. Then the next question is, do I want a Lambda trigger on my bucket? No, I'm happy without that at the minute. I don't need it for this solution. I hit enter. And so that has created the service, the CloudFormation templates that I need to provision this backend. And so the next command I need to do is amplify push to push that configuration into the backend and provision that service. So amplify push -y. -y is simply saying I don't want to be prompted again. I just want the push command to go through all the way to completion. So as the command comes through, I'm seeing that, yep, storage is the operations can create on it, auth and API have no change. And so as this command goes, you can see that it's not only creating an S3 bucket, but it's also creating IAM access policies and roles so you can access the S3 bucket. And this is so Amplify is doing all of that heavy lifting where I have to create policies, etc., to access the bucket. It's done that all for me. Pretty easy. Next command I'm going to run is Amplify Console. So Amplify Console has two flavors, either the Amplify Admin UI or, and this is it, the console inside the AWS console. This gives me a nice overview visually of what I've created. So I've got 3 categories there. If I click into file storage, you'll see I've got a link to the S3 bucket that is just created for me. So if I click in the S3 bucket, this will bring up the AWS S3 console. And inside here will be my globally unique bucket that I've just created. So that's good. That's all done. And it'll also give me all of the properties of it that I need and the name of it. So I'm happy that my amplify push command has worked. There's my backend resource ready to start building with. The next stage of my application, I need to change the GraphQL schema. So I have a bucket, but what I need to do, I need to make the AppSync schema aware of this bucket. So I'm going to give it a new type. The new type I'm going to give it is image. And in the image, I'm going to make as a string. So this will be the name of my image, which will then correlate to a name of an image inside that bucket. I'm going to make it non-nullable at the minute, just so I can easily develop through this. And as well as once I've updated the schema, I then have to just add some extra state into my app. So this is my app.txx. So I have a number of pieces of state in here. The first one is the recipe. So I want to add an image to this recipe. So I'm adding the image as a piece of state to this recipe, giving it again the type of string. It will be the image name. The other piece of state I'm going to add is going to be the photo URI. So as I'm in a mobile phone environment, I need a link to where this photo is in the mobile device. So I'm going to call this state the photo URI. So next, I'm just going to initialize those two pieces of state. I'm going to initialize the image state and the photo URI state to nothing, to an empty string. So those states are ready, those pieces of state are ready to be populated as my user goes through the application. So once I've done that, I've updated my GraphQL schema. I now need to update my API. So it regenerates the GraphQL operations like mutations and subscriptions and queries, and includes the new field of image. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm pushing all of those updates to the API, making sure that I'm using the Cognito user pool for auth, so I can access any users inside that Cognito user pool can access the S3 bucket. So push here, shouldn't take too long, regenerate the schema. And when that's finished, I'll then introspect the schema that is generated for me. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm just looking inside the, once that's finished, I'll look inside the generated schema directory. So that's in the source GraphQL area, and I'll look at queries. So in the queries.ts, if I just pull that down a little bit, scroll up, and I'll see that it's now got the concept of image. So that's worked really well. My schema has been updated. It's been deployed to the AppSync backend, and now that's ready to go. So let's just test that worked okay. So I'm creating a new recipe just to make sure that my API still works after those changes. Just some dummy data, hit save, and yes, great. So my recipe has been created successfully, and that means that the changes I've just made still work. Also, let's have a look at what I've just built. So Amplify Console, if you remember, will bring up Amplify in the Amplify web console. If I look into API this time, because we've updated our schema, if I look in the DynamoDB table, which I've just clicked in here, so this is where we're persisting all our data, look at the items tab, you'll see that I've got an entry, it's a recipe type, and there we have the image field there as well. So with a couple of commands, I have changed my schema, I have updated my DynamoDB table, and I've pushed that all and configured my backend accordingly in a couple of minutes. So that was very cool. So that's my backend updated. The next bit I want to do, I want to add the concept of photos to the UI into the mobile app itself. So let's go ahead and do that. So here I am back in my development environment. What I want to do first, I want to just tidy everything up and scroll down to where I'm going to add this UI. So I'm going to put the images right at the bottom above the save button. So I go into my render method, I look at all the tags that I've got here. So my last text input tag, and before my save button, I'm going to write my image code. So the first thing I want to do, I want to check the state to make sure that the photo URI, which remember is the link to the physical photo on the device, if that exists. If it doesn't exist, I need to render a button, which will then call an action, which will bring up for the user the ability to select a photo that's on the device. So that's what I'm building here. So I'm building a simple button. I'm going to wire it up to a function that I'll write in a little bit called handle choose photo. And I will give that button some style and some text. Text typically would be something like add photo. and style will be the same style as all the other buttons. So I'm just copying the styles that we've already used for the buttons and giving the button some text, add photo, as well as the section where we don't have a photo URI. We also need a section where we do have a photo URI, and in this section I need to render the photo itself. So if you think about it, I've just came through the app, I've pressed the add photo button, it's popped up the little photo picker. I've selected a photo picker, and now I go back into this create recipe screen. I need to render that photo. And so this is what I'm doing now. I'm just having an image tag, and inside the image tag, I'm giving the URI of the photo URI, which will render that image inside this tag. Again, I'm setting up some specific styles for the image. So I'm going to set the height and width to 200 for this image, and that's my UI finished. So now when I need to render the handle choose photo function. So this is what I'm building now. It's going to be an async function, and of course I'm going to wrap it in a try catch because errors happen. And so what I'm going to use to actually pop up the choose photo dialog is a third-party React Native component called React Native Image Picker. This is available online in GitHub. I'm going to install it in npm, and then I'm going to import it at the top of my file. So it's import, and it's called the launch image library, which is a function inside the React Native Image Picker, which will launch the photo image picker. Once I have imported that, I then call that function, and it needs a number of options. So I'm going through the options where I set the media type. I set whether I need base64 encoded images or not. I then set the dimensions of each photograph that I'll pick. And once I've finished that, I need then to build the callback. So for this callback, all I really want to do, I want to take the response. I want to pull out the URI from the response, which will be the URI of my photo. And I want to assign that value into the photo URI state. So that's what I'm doing here. I get photo URI set to response.uri. So that is my handle choose photo, setting the state for the photo URI, which I then render in my UI. Of course, I want to check for not null because null pointers are evil. And then that is that code finished. So if I save that, I could then exercise my app. And in theory, I should be able to see a photograph. So let's see how that happens. So hit new recipe, hit some dummy data, add photo, and there's our photo picker. So these are all the images that I've got on this mobile phone. I choose one, and there it is. It renders right at the top, right at the bottom of the create recipe, above the save button, exactly where I wanted it to go. And so that's looking really slick. So I'm pretty happy with that. So that is the UI updates done. I think it's time to move on to the next step. So the next step is putting it all together. So I've created the backend. The backend is the S3 bucket, AppSync schema changes, and DynamoDB table changes. I have created my UI, so the front end changes have done. Now I need to wire the two up. So I need to change those methods, the get, fetch, and the retrieve methods that get all the data, and I need to fill that data with images. So here I am back in my IDE. So the first thing I need to do is I need to find those functions that I talked about right at the top of this talk, the create recipe and the fetch recipe. The first one is the create recipe. So this function is called when we hit save on the create recipe screen. So what I need to do, I need to pass the image that I've saved up through into the S3 bucket that I've created. So the first thing I need to do is I need to fetch that image using the photo URI. So this is using, again, a React Native fetch command, which will fetch that photo given the photo URI. Once I've finished that fetch command, the next thing I need to do, I need to create a blob. So I need to create a binary large object, which is the photo, from the fetch command, so from the output of the fetch command. So another constant going to call it photo blob. And for this one, I'm just going to go photo and then get the blob object of that photo. So now I've got the blob of the photo. I need to now store that in S3. So for that, I'm going to start using my client libraries, my Amplify client libraries. And this client library we're using for this one is storage. So storage, I haven't actually imported it into my application yet. So I'll quickly do that. So if I go import, I've got already Amplify imports there. So I'll add the storage import. Amplify, and there's storage, add it in there, and then back to my method in my function once it's done. And so here we are back in create recipe, storage.put. So I've got a number of, so I'm going to call storage.put. Storage.put will take the image. So it needs a name. So from this, my image name is stored in my forms.state.image. And then it's also going to take the actual content itself, which is the blob. So what storage.put does, it gets the binary objects and it stores it as a name inside the bucket I've configured. I can also set the level, so I'm setting this to private, and I'm also setting the content type to image and a JPEG image as well. I can just remove all the other bits of that snippet. And then that is my create recipe done. So what I've done, that S3 object now exists, should be persisted. The next bit is fetch recipes. So fetch recipes is called when the list displays that we're seeing at the minute on the iOS device. So again, we need our storage. And for this, I need to configure it to the right level. So the first thing I need to do is go, well, all the objects that I've stored are level private. So all the objects I'm retrieving need to be at level private too. I'm just doing it inside this function just for brevity, just to make sure that everything's in one place. Don't have to do it here. But here is the most important bit. So now I need to iterate through all of the recipes that the fetch command retrieves. And for every recipe in that map, I need to make a call out to get the actual location of the image. So what storage does for us really, really nicely here is it gives us an image key. So this is a key that's unique to each particular image. So what I need to do, I need to save that image key inside my state. So what I'm doing here, I'm using storage.get with the image name on my S3 bucket to return a key. This key I then will put into the recipe.image state, so that when the list is displayed after fetch recipes is called, it'll have an image. So that's all that is doing. Obviously, I need to put it in the right place. So I need to put this after we've done our initial GraphQL query. So we now have our recipes. So I've got my recipes, I'm iterating through them, and for each image in the recipe, I'm getting that key. Once that's done, the other thing I forgot to render the actual image in the list. So I am adding the rendering component of the image. So I'm going image, tag, source. Again, we're using URI. So I'll go URI, it'll be recipe .image, which will be the key, the image key that we've got, which will be a URL. Again, I'll give it a style and give it a style, and that's pretty much the UI done. Save that and let's give it a test. So at the minute I've got all burgers. Don't really want all burgers because remember, no images have any names. So if I clear everything out, create a new recipe. This time I think I'm going to eat some really nice salad. I'll have one serving of that, and it's going to be lettuce and cheese, because that's what a salad is, isn't it? And then it's some notes. It's very healthy. Add my salad picture that I've created earlier, and that's my salad. I've got my picture, I've got my list, I've got my photos uploaded. That looks really good. So what did we just do? So I did a number of things. I started off with added the image field to the AWS AppSync schema, added the image field to the Amazon DynamoDB table. I then created the S3 bucket. I wired up the S3 bucket so that you can, from the app, retrieve a key that's a pre-signed URL, which will give anybody who has logged into the app access to that image. And that's it. And also, I use a lot of Amplify. So thanks for listening. If you want to reach out, any questions about this talk, please do so. Number of channels you can reach out in the socials, they're all here. And thanks again for listening. Hope to all see you again next time. My name's Derek Bingham. I'm a developer advocate at AWS. Thanks now. Bye.